Ready? Oh, okay. Good evening and welcome to CCSD21 Board of Education meeting for January 20th, our first meeting of the 2022 calendar year. Let's first start with a quorum, and sitting in for our board secretary, Jessica, is Vice President Debbie. Debbie.
Okay, Phil?
Aye.
I am here. Jessica?
I'm here.
Virtual. Okay, Stacy Allen?
Yes.
Arlen?
Aye.
Bill?
Present.
And Stacy.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, thank you. Everybody, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
The flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one
nation, under God,
hope,
indivisible.
and justice for all.
Thank you again and welcome. Before we move on to board communications, let me just quickly state that we began this week with the remembrance of Martin Luther King Jr. I could just express the hope that as public school advocates, that we all remember living by the content of each other's character as opposed to anything else. And I know this district has long adopted that philosophy, and I look forward to the continuation of that. With that, let me go on to board communications. Bill?
I get to start this. I'm wonderful. For EdRed, the EdRed legislative dinner that was supposed to occur in about 10 days has been postponed until Monday, April 25th due to COVID concerns. There was no member meeting in January. The next member meeting will be Friday, February 11th. And for those who don't typically attend, there will be held virtually, so you'll be able to do it online if you wish. And now for the Iasb update, which will be even shorter. As of last week, 20 state organizations, including the Illinois Association of School Boards, have withdrawn from the NSBA. They are still looking into what to do going forward from there.
Yeah, apparently those 20 state associations are in the process of trying to work on a substitute organization, or at least put together a substitute conference from the NSBA conference, because by NSBA's rules, districts and states that are not part of the federation cannot participate in any NSBA activity. So those 20 states, including our state of Illinois, is working on that. So Debbie, NSSCO, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Normally I call on you first. I skipped right past you.
Very quick meeting we had this month. The biggest thing is Timber Ridge. We were going to be doing the ribbon cutting on the new gym at our February meeting, but like everything else, because of COVID, we have decided to push it back till March. So as soon as we get the information, I'll send that out, because that's really exciting how long they've been working on that and that it's finally ready to go.
Okay. Any questions for Deb or Bill? No? North Cook Intermediate Service Center, Arlen, do you have any updates for us?
Good evening, everybody. I'm sorry to be remote. It's one of the issues with COVID. A couple of updates for you. On North Cook, we had our meeting yesterday. We're in very good shape financially. I'm happy to report our revenues and expenditures are in line with about half the year. In addition, our Safe Schools program is actually booming. And at this time, we cannot even accept another student unless we're able to hire another social worker. So if anybody knows a part-time or full-time possible social worker, North Cook would love to talk to them. And then one of the interesting and exciting things happening is that in the ISB budget is a substantial increase in funding for the ISCs across the state. As you know, we've gone through very tough times in the beginning. When I started on North Cook, we were in very tough financial shape. The regionals were almost shut down at one point. And now apparently because of COVID especially, they realize the functions that the regional ISCs perform for school districts across the state could not be handled by ISB. So that we will know that is in the budget. It'll wait for the General Assembly to approve it. But we're optimistic we'll be getting more funds to be able to do more things. Two other quick notes. I have attended 3 PTOs virtually, Longfellow, Kilmer, and Cooper. And as I always do, I thanked everybody at all of them. At the Longfellow event, I thanked all the parents and the teachers and our staff. And when I finished, they then applauded our staff and the Board of Education for the job we've done to protect the children. So that was delightful to hear. And then one other note, you all know I'm very involved with the 708 Mental Health Board. We actually appeared before Buffalo Grove this last Tuesday and made a presentation on what a 708 Mental Health Board would do for our community. Got a good reception by the Buffalo Grove Board. We will be in front of the Prospect Heights Board next week, and we'll look forward to coming before District 21, Phil, at some point in the near future. And then we will also do Wheeling and Arlington Heights. This will be, God willing, on the referendum on the ballot this coming November. So a lot of work to do between now and then to get the 708 Mental Health Board approved. Thank you, and that's all I've got for you.
Okay, thank you, Arlen. Appreciate those.
Welcome.
Jessica, anything to share tonight?
No, I don't have any updates.
Okay. Stacy?
No.
Stacy? Okay, before we move on to staff communications, last November at our state conference, it was announced that I had received an award from the Illinois State Board of Education. Yesterday morning at the January board meeting of the Illinois State Board was the actual resolution was read into the minutes and voted on, unanimously approved. And I did get I was asked to bring this. So this is the actual award. It's the Illinois State Board of Education Thomas Leigh Burroughs Award presented to Bill Pritzker, 2021, Illinois Outstanding School Board President. So I'll just leave that there. It's quite a piece of furniture.
Now you can show your grandchildren.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. In fact, it came while I was at work. So Susan had an opportunity to see where it's going to be placed, and the state board got a kick out of that yesterday morning when I mentioned that as well. It's obviously a rather humbling experience to have read into the minutes of the board yesterday what was read. And in 32 years, as I mentioned yesterday, I've served with 25 colleagues at this table, 4 superintendents, including our current one. And it's just been an amazing experience so far. So I appreciate the support all of you have shown me over the years as well. And we will now move on. So
It was a great presentation, Phil, and I think it really meant something also to have Roger Eddy there to present to you virtually as well, having worked with him the way you have in the past.
Well, of the 8 board members, there's still 1 vacancy on the Illinois State Board because it's a 9-member board appointed by the governor. They have overlapping type terms. But obviously, I worked with Roger at Iasb when he was executive director, and I was on the board there and president. Donna Leak, who's the vice chair of ISB, superintendent, and still is superintendent, down in South Cook. So I've known her for a number of years while I was traveling the state for IASB. And Jaime Guzman, who was with CPS and represented CPS on the IASB board. So of the 8 members there, I knew 3 very directly, and of course, Darren, the chair. So it was almost like an old home week, it seemed like. But
Phil, let me just add, Arlen here, that I too watched the presentation, and I don't know if I'm up there, I don't see myself, but in any case, it was very impressive. You know, obviously, I've been the longest with you on this board, 28 of your 32 years. And you've done some great things. You've been a hardworking, dedicated, committed school board member and president. You've committed to the community. You've always faced things with a clear head and a clear mind, and caring about your fellow board members. One of the reasons why our board has been one of the special boards in the state of Illinois. And if you look at Facebook and the comments from people who have followed you over the years after I posted the award, the comments are just unbelievable. So we appreciate all of your hard work. We appreciate everything you've done. I hope you're turning colors right now because I'm trying to embarrass you. But in any case, Phil, thanks for everything you've done for District 21.
Thank you, Arlen. I appreciate that. Of course, it's taken you almost 28 plus years to be able to say that to me, but
Well,
seriously,
we don't want to rush these things, Phil.
truly, I appreciate that. It's very kind, very kind. Okay, let's move on to staff communications. Dr. Conley.
Good evening, everybody. So I just wanted to start off, we've got a couple of different communications to provide the board with this evening. Very briefly, I wanted to start off with just a very broad overview of how things have been going the last couple of weeks since the return from winter break with COVID-19 and the Omicron variant. As predicted, January has been a white knuckle month. We're hanging on, but we're doing okay. Obviously, a lot of, and this is not atypical for anybody right now, but a lot of staff absences that we've had to contend with. But really, because of the level of teamwork and supporting colleagues, and just the willingness of everybody to pitch in and just kind of make sure that those classrooms are covered, we've been able to keep those classrooms covered and keep our buildings open. So we did not have to shut down because of any kind of staff issues, which is unfortunately not the case in some other districts. As far as our student case counts, as we expected, they were quite significant coming back. I think our first week back, we had just under, about 470 positive student cases. In the entirety of the previous 9 months, when we started testing in April, we had never had more than 35 across the district or 40 across the district. And to see that 471 that first week back was a little shocking. We knew we were going to have a lot, but to see that was like, whoa. I am happy that last week that number was pretty much cut in half. We were just over 200. We're still waiting for results to come back from this week's testing, but we're holding pretty decently. Most buildings that have their results in are seeing between in the high teens to low 20s of kids testing positive. I do think that although it was a little bit of a rush, the being able to implement the new processes and dropping from 10 days to 5 days has really helped, both with staff and with students. There's some level of anxiety from some parents that we've heard of that are kind of wondering why we didn't go into an adaptive pause district-wide, or just kind of feeling overall nervous about kids coming back a little sooner. And of course, on the other side, we've got some parents who are a little disappointed that their close contact children who have been in close contact are being excluded. Those are parts of the guidance that we get from IDPH and from Iasb. And we're obligated to follow that guidance. And so, this is another reason why vaccination is very important. Students who are fully vaccinated do not need to quarantine or to be excluded if they're close contacts. So, I know that there is still controversy out there, and some may not like me saying this, but the vaccines work. That is been proven over and over again. It has the extra added benefit of making it easier for your child to stay in school. So again, implore all parents to vaccinate their eligible children. But we're hanging in there. And I think we're starting to see, as predicted, case counts are starting to come down. Cook County Department of Public Health last week told us that we were probably, 10 to 14 days away from kind of being through the worst of it. I think we have peaked in Illinois. So I think we're each week, we're going to be in a better and better position. And what comes next, who knows? Every time we try to predict it, something different happens. So, but we're rolling with it.
Let me just say that one of the reasons that we're at where we are, as opposed to many other districts, not only in our immediate area, but throughout the state or across the country, is because of the exceptional teamwork and early work that Mike, you and your team, entire administrative team, did in preparing for this pandemic. We were ahead of the game in most cases. The level of mitigation and the extent and the breadth of the work that was done ensured that we had the best possible opportunity to bring our kids back in person for as long as we have been. And the fact that we only had 8 classes across the district that had to go into
We had a
adaptive pause.
Yeah, and several of those were preschool classes, and again, because some of our little ones just are not able to keep masked. So that kind of increases the. But yeah, no, it was quite sporadic, and let me just say, kudos to the building principals and to their staffs getting very creative. I mean, we did have classes that were just decimated. A class of 25 and 22 of the kids were out. But the 3 kids that weren't, they were able to be absorbed so that they could stay in class. They didn't have to. I think we had one situation where we just couldn't make that work because of the program. But by and large, we were able to really maximize and absorb kids so that they could stay in class.
Most appreciated. Okay, let's move on to.
Yes, so I'm going to turn this over to Michael. We have our kind of brief update in terms of our presentation of our annual financial report as well as our auditor's report. So Michael, take it away.
So Nick is held up in Leiden's audit. If we can either pass this or I could summarize and then have him come back later, whatever you'd like to do, but he is going to text me as soon as he's ready.
Why don't you go ahead and summarize it?
Okay.
If the board has questions that we can circle back to Nick with, then that's fine. If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
If I had a piano, I would have sung. All right, so Nick does a way better job of this than me, but I will say him and I spent about an hour on the phone on Friday, just summarizing, going through, making sure that, everything that I saw that I interpreted correctly, because finance is not my first life. So he is definitely the person I use to make sure that I'm reading things accurately. We had another very good year overall. It was a lot of activity. Last year we had for fiscal year 20, we did the restatement where we looked at the employee deduction liabilities, that we did a restatement to capture those as the fund balance that they were. We took on this year so that we could be very transparent with our healthcare expenses, the internal service fund, which previously those dollars had been set up as Fund 15, which was part of Fund 10, but it really didn't show where the reserve was. and how we were segregating those dollars and what we were paying. So they were busy setting that up the first part of the year. The audit was conducted virtual. We are looking to have more in person next year because it is harder with the exchange of documents. But the end result is that we did have a surplus again this year. The surplus, end surplus was around $7 million like we thought it would be. Some of that is captured now in the reserve for the healthcare. So that is sequestered as it was originally intended, but now there is no way to go ahead and spend that, borrow from it, anything, unless the board takes official action to move that back into the ed fund. So we had, when we negotiated with the union 4 years ago, there was an establishment of a $5.5 million reserve for the self-insurance fund, which was a good spot to be when we didn't know where we were on self-insurance, what the experience history was going to look like. And that reserve did grow by $274,000 this year. Small growth as opposed to years past. Part of it is 6 months of that financial year. We have had some rocky history. We are at about 116% of experience for fiscal year 21 or calendar year 21. So what that meant is 6 months of that year was captured in the audit. And what we see is people went back and had their surgeries that they were going to have the year before. They went back to doctors. They had different, things that in previous years they hadn't had. So that focused a lot of that. The overall ed fund grew by a little over $2.5 million. Remember, that is together technically with the internal service fund, which makes up that $7.5 million surplus. And we across all funds had a positive year. So overall, again, Nick and I talked a lot about process too, to make sure that if there's anything we can do to make sure that our processes and procedures are any tighter, that we were to get to that point so that we're more efficient, more effective in making sure we're tracking our money, preventing any type of errors or types of mistakes that in the past had happened that we've cleaned up over the last couple of years with the help of Baker Tilly. So any questions?
Yeah, Bill?
Not so much a question, but something you and I discussed earlier. As part of the AFR, there's the profile summary,
Yes.
and we again achieve the recognition of the status of recognition. Historically, have we been doing with that?
So back in 2014 was the previous time that the district had been in recognition up until the last 4 years. We have now been in recognition status for the last 4 years, starting in 2018. So 2018, 19, 20, and 21. We just missed recognition status in 2017, which is a huge credit to what you think about 2014 landed the district. I'm sorry, 2013 was the last time on financial recognition. 2014, the board was on financial watch, only spent 2 years on review, and then the last 4 years have been in recognition status, which is a huge credit to the board, to Mary, my predecessor, the negotiations with the union, the sacrifice that was shared by everybody in the district. And I think we've really done a nice job of continuing on a fiscal responsibility, a path of fiscal responsibility to make sure that we don't have any setbacks.
And since we've been on recognition status for 4 years, this is not something that's attributable to federal funds coming in.
Correct. I mean, ESSER 3, which is the largest amount that we've received, we just got, which is for fiscal year 22, essentially, and we'll go 22, 23, 24. ESSER 2 and ESSER 1 were part of last year, but those dollars have supplemented some expenditures. But even if you take out the dollars that were spent from the CARES Act and even some of the other funds that we received, we still would have been at a surplus. So it truly is the philosophy that starts with the board, and then I give a huge amount of credit to our department chairs and then the building principals and their staffs. The teachers have shown incredible responsibility in what they ask and seek to order. It's made the principals' jobs very easy. And then the principals have used their funds very judiciously, even to the point of if they are looking at a surplus, either asking if they could use it for a special project or looking to use it the following year. So it truly has been a top-down start, but it's been from the bottom up the last 3 years that everybody has shared in that sacrifice.
And you didn't mention yourself and Mike in that all too, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Stacy, Jess or R, anything? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Michael.
So Michael's going to keep going because we're going to switch gears, and Michael's going to take us through our upcoming summer of construction, including our beginning our library renovations. So go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. This is very exciting. This is probably even more exciting than the finances because we are truly putting to work that money in a way that benefits kids, and that you guys set out a vision in 2019 for the referendum, and that we have continued to put money away year after year in order to make sure that we can not only take care of those basic needs on the capital project, but also the needs that had the vision of the 2019 referendum of 21st century furniture, secure vestibules, and all the things that went with it.
18.
18, sorry. Wow, that's right, I was hired in 19. Good catch. I was trying to take credit for the referendum, I guess, so.
I mean, to be fair, we started doing the work in 19, so.
That is true. So we have a number of funding sources, which makes this summer a little bit different than the past couple on the projects. And that, again, goes to the work that everybody's put in on this. We are doing things with IDEA funds through Kim's work. Last year, we started with the life skills renovation at London. This year, we're getting the same type of setup at Riley, and that is because there are dedicated funds through the IDEA grant that we're using for that. Obviously, ESSER funds are there. We have about $2.5 million to use towards HVAC. Most of that will be spent this year. The remaining HVAC will be tackled with some of those funds next year. The 2018 referendum, which I will go back and edit that slide later, those funds will be for the libraries and for some of the other work that we're doing with regards to lighting and things like that. Glenn secured the school maintenance project grant, which is a $50,000 match to any spend that we have over $50,000. That's going to go towards the Cooper elevator. Obviously, the evidence-based funding transfers and the local property taxes and the bonds that we issued from working cash and moved into capital projects are all a part of that funding. So again, we have a large spend this summer, but a lot of it is being reduced by other funds. And just today, Dr. Connolly received word that a request he had made from the, and I always get this wrong, the DEOC, the Economic Development, anyway, whichever the letters are, it's $95,000 that we are getting from the state that will also be used towards that Riley project. So we have reduced the total spend that comes out of general dollars that we've put forward by having other funding sources, and that helps out immensely to get towards the 10-year plan.
So let me just jump in there for a second because I have to give a little bit more background. And this is now an update topic for tomorrow, my weekly update that won't be there because we're talking about it now. So way to steal my thunder.
Sorry.
But
Part of the funding source.
so this harkens back to in 2019 in the I think it was in Governor Pritzker's first budget, and there was a lot of capital money that was kind of apportioned out, and state representatives and state senators were able to advocate for specific spends within their areas. And so at that point, and this was summer of 2019, I submitted a very broad proposal to Senator Gillespie on providing some funding to support creation of innovation spaces within our learning centers, particularly those buildings that are in her district. And so, as things are oftentimes the case, we didn't really hear anything, or I take that back. We didn't get the first cycle, but Senator Gillespie kept us in the queue. And so that was what we were notified of today. I have not had the opportunity to speak with Senator Gillespie at all. This is now it's in the hands of the Illinois Department of Economic, IDEOC. And so, I would assume that she's aware but I don't know. So at some point, I'm going to reach out to the senator, and Arlen's probably already calling her. Sorry. That is really where that's coming from. And it actually fits very well because we are going to be doing that learning center work at Riley. And then in the future, as we do Poe's library and so on and so forth.
So this year's summer construction has 4 locations: Cooper, Riley, Tarkington, and Twain. Obviously, we count the new admin and community center as a different project as it's being paid for from a different source. When we look to the different projects, summer at Cooper this year is going to be, by their standards, a little bit lighter, but still pretty intense. They're getting the library renovation, which we have some renderings in the board packet. We may even take a look at the end. The elevator modernization, we're actually not modernizing, we are replacing the elevator so that we will get a longer useful life out of it. That's because of the school maintenance project grant. And then mechanical upgrades. And those mechanical upgrades will be to the joy, I'm sure, of the teachers on the second floor, replacing the issues that we had last year. It was the last of the areas we could get to, as well as some renovations on the first floor. And you can see those on the maps that are contained within the packet. Moving on to Riley, they probably have the most significant renovation going on. There are some mechanical upgrades going on there, some rooftop replacements, and then controls upgrades so that we can get a better handle on the heat and air conditioning through our Johnson control system. They are getting both their first and second floor restrooms are being reconfigured and renovated. Riley has a unique situation where all of the boys' restrooms are on one side of the building and all of the girls are on another. We're bringing them so that kids don't have to run all the way across the building, cause disruption, obviously other issues that could occur when you have to go far. So that is an exciting renovation that's occurring there. The gym floor is being replaced, which is obviously a big deal. We're trying to get across the district and do that. LED lighting and flooring across the whole building as well. And then, as we mentioned, that life skills room for our ELSP students that are over there at Riley, which is a really exciting opportunity for them. And our London students are already taking advantage of that this year.
With the life skills room, I don't think we've really ever said exactly what we're doing in those rooms. So Kim, you want to describe kind of what that room is going to look like when it's done?
Sure. Right. So a huge component of our life skills program is to start working on functional life skills. And it's difficult to do that without a sink, a refrigerator, a dishwasher, a microwave, and skills that we want to teach our children to be able to generalize into their home environment and start to practice for lifelong skills. Also to have a washer and a dryer because it's never too early to start to learn those skills for any student. So yeah, we're just really excited to bring that in. Once things open up more, we've been doing more community-based instruction because we have the buses so that students in the programs can go grocery shopping and, select the items that they need to start working on the making of small snacks and that sort of thing. So I'm really excited that through working together, we've been able to make this happen.
Moving on to Tarkington, they have a significant amount of work going on too. We're going to do Tarkington in 2 summers just because of the magnitude of work that has to occur there, including getting their HVAC in the front office squared away. We were going to do that this summer, but there are some logistical issues regarding the soffits that will be required, and we're trying to find a better way. So they still will be getting mechanical upgrades that impact the library. They need a new rooftop unit there. We have been holding it together. Glenn's people have done a great job. It truly has been a major effort by them to make sure that the heat and the air have both been functioning at a level that was comfortable, truly doing it manually. So that'll be a big improvement. We're doing in the first floor replacement of all of that carpet that's in the entryway bringing that into a much more modern 21st century look. And then we are also doing some first floor LED lighting replacement. The plan is to follow that entry hallway, the carpeting back to the gym, and then taking a left as you walk in down the hall where there's some offices that leads to the academic instruction program. And then carrying the flooring and lighting through those classrooms as well, so that we only have the second half of the building to do next year along with that front HVAC project. Moving up to the second floor, the library renovation. They have a really cool plan. All of the libraries look great. The entryway and the way that they've tied together the STEM and art room across the hall is really going to look stunning. Again, doing those upper floor, we're doing the STEM and art room as well as the 2 classrooms. There's a classroom and then music room across that hallway. And doing the bathrooms up there, replacing fixtures because they're either broken or worn out, as well as doing an epoxy floor, LED lighting, and cleaning up the walls because we didn't want to have a brand new library and the older bathrooms there. We'll get to the other bathrooms within the district, but being the showcase that this is going to be, wanted to make sure that that got renovated. And then also looking at doing just some other lighting and LED on an alternate basis, making sure the pricing's right so that it sticks within our budget. And then they are getting a new floor in their MPR and gym as well. They already had new lights in their gymnasium. The MPR will be getting new lights with the rest of the building, but those 2 rooms will have that makeover. And then moving on to Twain. Twain is probably the least amount of work of anybody, but probably one of the biggest difference. And I know Dr. Connolly's favorite project is the library there because he's not a big fan of the colors. I don't think anybody really is, but we were told Twain was #1, so it looks like a Golden Girls episode, but
It does. There's a lot of coral
Yeah.
color
So-
cabinetry.
so as much as we'd like to pay tribute to Betty White, we're not going to leave it. So they're getting their brand new library. They're also getting some exterior lighting. And then the last thing is last year, the nurse's office somehow was left off the list for the flooring. So that's a very small project, but very important to bring that up to date with the rest of the building. That is the 2022 work. As I said, there's a ton of different funding sources which have really gone to allow this project to move forward at such a large scope. The original estimate was about 14.3 million. That included some HVAC work and paving at Frost that we decided to set aside so we didn't take on too big of a scope with the building next door as well. The 50% design estimate was about 11.7, and that was not because of the Frost stuff that was removed. It truly is, we are continuing to get competitive pricing, which I do attribute to our relationship with Nicholas. They have some great contractors that they shop around to, make sure that they have quality people that are giving us the best price. And then our 90% design estimate is due, it was due tomorrow. It's probably going to be about a week out because we did go ahead and push the dates for the bidding about a week to give our kind of few extra days because of some plumbing issues that we're trying to incorporate into the STEM rooms. And we want to make sure we get them right and don't have a bunch of change orders or added costs later. Next summer, we're already thinking about that. As a matter of fact, as soon as these bids get opened in February, they will start walking Hawthorne for one. To go ahead and look to the second floor for the equity and learning and student services offices and learning spaces there for the staff. And also doing the first floor because Hawthorne is going to get new furniture this year for the pre-K program based upon Lynn and Kim identifying some funding sources to go ahead and get that furniture off the ground. So they will get the furniture and then we'll go ahead and upgrade the classrooms with the tile and the lighting next year. We also have more libraries next year. London, Field, Kilmer, and Longfellow are currently the ones on target to be next summer. More HVAC in Frost and Tarkington, more lighting in Tarkington, trying to figure out some other buildings. And then more flooring, which would be Tarkington as well as some other places as we try and upgrade all of the buildings across the district in a short time span. That's about it. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, wish us luck with the bidding process.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do. It's Arlen here. I thought we were going to see some artwork on the new LMC concepts. Is that later in the agenda? Or
No,
what-
we're going to go there right now, Arlen.
Oh, okay, fine.
So yes, there we go.
So with the help of Tyler, we're going to go ahead and just look through a few of these. These are, I would call them around 90 to 95% complete. We had a meeting yesterday to go over finishes, to go over final built-in cabinetry and some other things. And so we did make some tweaks in some of the buildings. This one here is Riley. It is a completely different space. We have taken what was the art room and a kind of an intervention room, and we're going to swap the art room, the STEM room with the intervention room, so that as you can see up at the top of the screen, there's 2 classrooms. If you look at the rendering on the right side or the left side, those will become the STEM and art rooms. And the one on the left, which is the STEM room, has a garage door to open so that way it's glass. You can have more people involved in a meeting through that room. Flexible seating throughout. Each of the elementary libraries will have a single group study room or group room. And then there's a classroom space dedicated in all of those. And then you see some of the creative furniture, as in the serpentine-like bookcase with some seating. You also see a now mobile circulation desk rather than us being tied to a standard built-in circulation desk. And Riley has just some really cool space in it that has been designed both through Archon and our furniture designer who's working with Larson, who we've used for some furniture in the past. And all of the elementaries, as well as Cooper, will have a green screen room as well. So really just blending that technology with the library side so that we get the most out of those spaces.
Nice.
Next, Tyler. The next one is Twain. One of the really neat features of Twain is what was their STEM room before, but the ability to now bring it to what we really want out of a STEM room, including a sink, some really nice storage and whatnot. You can see that in the upper left. It's on the bottom of the screen. It's in that kind of rectangular room with the brown tabletops. One of the nice features there is those doors will now open as well so that you have a space that can accommodate either a larger class, a meeting, whether that be staff, parents, large groups of students. They have a group room to the right of that'll have a green screen as well. And then they have really one of the larger footprints regarding openness that truly made this a blank canvas. There are no columns in Twain, unlike Cooper or Tarkington. It really gave us the flexibility to do some nice stuff, including one of the issues that the STEM teacher had brought to us was that students sometimes were distracted in the STEM room by the door that led to the outside. And so we were able to flip that door to go to the other side so that the STEM room truly became a classroom that didn't have those distractions and didn't have some of those attractive nuisances for kids to kind of take off after. And so now it truly will be a room that they can do some great projects in. It's going to have good storage and a lot of the things that the teachers have given us great input through as we went building to building. And the STEM teachers have really had a great vision. It added some things, but things that were definitely needed for the project. The next one is Tarkington, and Tarkington has a lot to work with because it had what felt like lower ceilings. It had some closed off spaces because of the columns, and then what was across them kind of blocking off access to the room, as well as the castle that is in Tarkington. And I know that there are some, nostalgia. There's some nostalgia surrounding the castle, but it really is not being able to be used to its greatest extent. So we're trying to find a different use for the castle. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead, open up that space and really redo even the entrance to the library by connecting it to the STEM and art rooms across the hall. They will have, and that would be, they're not on, well, you can see them a little bit on here. We'll go to the second page of this in a second. but the entryway to the library will be a very magnificent entry with wood on the ceiling. To the right, you go into the library. To the left, you go into the STEM and art rooms. And there was a operable wall between the STEM and art rooms so that staff meetings can occur, so that larger group projects can occur. And it really will be able to become a space of collaboration, both on that STEM and art side and then in the library. And you can see there's the dedicated class space. We're adding 3 new windows to Tarkington because there was no natural light that really came in other than some small windows. And so we're gonna add some windows, take the ceiling up higher in some spots to kind of open up the room. And they're getting a really nice floor plan and design, and we had some really great input from their staff as well. Tyler, if you can scroll up, we can see those STEM and art rooms. So you can see here, one of the things, we're gonna lose the table in the middle because we had to move the operable wall to make it a little bit more equal sized between those rooms. Because what we did was there's a very large classroom and then a small office. So we're knocking out the wall from the small office to make them 2 regular sized classrooms so that we can fit the number of students we need in. And the operable wall will be a glass wall. So again, with some opaqueness in the middle so that it's not a distraction to the students, but you can open that up, use that space very effectively. And it really is a bright, airy space. And when you look at the renderings, we have some 360-degree renderings that are virtual, and it really is a nice, you look down the hallway with the new tile, it's a grand entryway to that library. And it really is going to be a huge lift to that. We're going to have to really raise the bar in the rest of the building because this is really a nice look for them as well. And then Cooper. And obviously Cooper's an extremely large area. It's a middle school. It takes up a huge section of that floor. We expanded the conference room into a classroom, turned a very small storage room across the hall into a conference room that's much needed for IEP meetings, parent meetings, different things that the principal needs to do. Opened up the entryway some. And then throughout it is flexible seating and areas for small groups to meet, and then some medium-sized groups. They're going to have a number of displays in that library, 2 green screen rooms for the middle school because the staff thought that was important. One of the really great things that their staff brought to the table was saying they probably hold on to too much stuff, and that now this allows them the opportunity to clean house and really make it the space that they envision, rather than kind of the clearinghouse for summer storage or some other things that they thought they probably didn't need to keep around. So I really think that they'll do some really nice things with this space. And I give a lot of credit. Our designer, we brought her on with Larson and Company back in mid-November, and she has really turned out some great designs for these 4 spaces, is also working with Kim and Lynn on the furniture for the pre-K. So we've been keeping her busy, and she keeps turning out some really great designs for us. And Chris, who's the owner of the company, adds his stamp to it as well. And they've done a great job as a partner, new partner to the district. They had been here for a few things a few years back. But I think that this is a relationship that we will go ahead and grow moving forward, including into the classrooms as we try and tie 21st century libraries into 21st century classroom spaces. But any questions?
Anything over here, Stacy?
Yeah, it's Arlen here. Thank you for the presentation. Very impressive. Mike and I talked about this a bit today, and I think seeing all the collaborative areas and the reading areas and all of that is very exciting. My only concern, I shared it with Mike today, is that the libraries don't lose the feel of a library. Because in the end, it's the books, to me, that are really such an integral part of a library. And so I know we're going to take some books out. We're going to trim down the collections a bit. That's probably warranted. But my only concern is being sure that they continue to be libraries. And they look great. The designs look great. I love the collaborative space. But that was my only concern today.
And Arlen, there are, a ton of bookshelves throughout each of the libraries, and even some of the nooks that you may not recognize in the drawings as shelves or display type units, those are definitely incorporated,
Yep.
as well as a discussion as we move forward about what libraries look like, realizing that books are important, but they're also important in the classroom, and just trying to figure that out
Right, right,
as a teaching community. So, but there is plenty of book storage.
great.
Anybody else? Okay, Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, move into board discussion. We have one item. I introduced the concept, oh God, 2-3 months ago, I guess, about the possibility of having some type of a student liaison or student representative to the Board of Education. I asked Mike to see what other districts might be doing in the area, and I think we have a couple of things that were shared with us. One from out in DuPage, which is a K-8 district, and of course, there's a couple of the high school districts that are doing this, Leiden Township being probably the closest one, I think.
Yeah.
Both superintendents that I spoke with, the DuPage County one has been doing it for 3 years now. And they've had nothing but positive reaction, both from parents and from the student representatives. But Mike, I don't know if you want to go ahead through your
Sure.
comments.
So I put together just a kind of a brief, kind of outline of what one way this could look if the board wanted to pursue this. And again, this really just is a starting point for conversation. There's, I think, a lot of different ways that the board could choose to approach this. But this was borrowed heavily from District 89, which is the district in DuPage County that is in their 3rd year of this program. And really, it for our purposes, it comes down to identifying ascending 8th graders that would then serve through their 8th grade year. So this would be, something that students would apply for in the spring of their 7th grade year. There's there's an application process. One of the things actually that Phil shared with me just today was from District 89, the superintendent there sent their application. So we could have a bit of a model around that. But, it's your pretty basic kind of, name, date, serial number, that kind of stuff, and some of the different criteria. And really kind of going through that process of ensuring that, that the students that are considered are doing what they need to do in the classroom, and that they're on the right path disciplinarily wise, and so on and so forth. But really trying to make sure that we're not that we're not creating barriers, so that really any student that has an interest in this has the opportunity to apply, and if they are selected, I would recommend at least one per middle school that they would be impaneled, if you want to call it that, in May, and then they would serve basically until the next May, when they are about to graduate. So I'll leave it there. In terms of the specifics, you kind of have some of the concepts there,
Thank you, Mike. Want to just get some reactions, some comments, to see if we have a consensus or direction to move forward with this. Stacy, let me start with you. Any type of reaction or comments?
I just maintain that I think this is a great idea. The one comment that I had looking at this, and I'm by no means setting out any sort of criteria for it, but maybe I'll leave that up to Beatrice. Some sort of diversity lens, just the students that we're choosing, maybe that's a factor to consider, that bringing in different perspectives and different backgrounds would be helpful.
Okay. Let me go to virtual land before I go to my left side. Jessica, any reaction or comments?
Hi, thanks, Phil, and please forgive the sound of my voice. For those of you who don't know, I'm appearing remotely because my family is suffering from COVID right now. Well, actually, I'm the only one suffering. Everyone else has bounced back. No, I mean, I think this is a great idea. I know we had some discussion at the last meeting, and I shared some thoughts. I won't reiterate them. And to piggyback on what Stacy just brought up, we always know who the student leaders are, but maybe we should be looking with a lens towards kids that aren't necessarily student leaders, but would really have some dynamic impact to provide to the board. And then certainly, a diverse slate of students, possibly even more than one slate of students, so that we could get more kids who might have some interest in seeing how the district leadership runs. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's further fleshed out.
Thank you, Jess. Arlen, any reaction?
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I did talk to Mike about it a little bit today, and actually Bill and I chatted a little bit about it today. I think it's a great starting point to create a program. I'm a huge believer in having worked on the strategic plan committee with students who were very effective and very thoughtful and had great contributions to our meetings. I think this has the potential to really bring a lot of people together in our school district community. One of the things that, as I talked to Mike about it, it seemed to me, I asked the question, well, what if we created councils in the buildings so that more kids were involved in this, and that in the middle schools, students were meeting in the buildings to talk about issues and then bringing it back to the board. And Mike said, well, I'm creating a council kind of like that already, and that's in the works. So it just seems to me that this is to me a starting point. I think it could be a great concept for our district. I'm a huge believer in students contributing. And in years past, we used to bring a lot of elected officials in and meet with students, and they learned a lot about civics in those meetings. So I just think this could be fantastic for District 21. I'd like to see us do a little more work on how it would work, and how more students could be involved in this at the building level.
Thank you, Arlen. I'm going to go to Bill because I know Bill has some questions about it as well, and then I'll come back to Stacy and to Debbie.
Thank you, Phil. Not so much questions, but Arlen stole a little bit of my thunder. I think conceptually getting student input is very useful. And I also think it's important to give our students, those who are interested, an authentic experience doing something like this. Not simply doing what some of our municipalities do, where they throw out an issue and bring some kids in to do a fake municipal meeting, but rather giving them a real authentic experience. And I think that's very valuable. Having said that, though, I don't know if this is the way to actually go about doing it. I'm going to mention a couple of my concerns and then an alternative path forward. As Arlen mentioned, we've seen through the strategic planning process, through the equity plan process, what our students could bring to us and what their viewpoint and how their viewpoints can help us. If we were to discuss things like that, or if we were to discuss amendments to curriculum, such as if we were to look at, and I know we've talked about looking at our exploratories in the middle school, hearing from the students would be very helpful for us. But that's not the majority of what we do. The majority of what we do are the levy process, the budget process, listening to an auditor's report, working with the municipalities on things like easement agreements or whatever, things that really aren't in the purview of a student, and I'm not quite sure how an 8th grader would be able to help us with those things. I've also looked into what's been going on with this, and the American School Board Journal recently posted an online piece on student participation. It focused entirely on juniors and seniors in high school. ISB has a student advisory council. In fact, I was listening to Phil's award yesterday, and after they cut away from the award, they went to the student advisory council. And again, all juniors and seniors in high school. Yes, we found the one place, and Mike, thank you for that, does do it near Wheaton with elementary students, but that seems to be few and far between. The other concern I have with this is that while this is offering something to our students, at least the way we're talking about now, it's offering to 3 students a year.
I'm
Is this,
sorry.
this is better, Phil? It's offering to only 3 students a year. I would like to see that we find a way, as Arlen mentioned, to offer it to more, and similar to that, you know, what I was thinking is more toward, and again, Mike, you're talking about that, as a superintendent's advisory committee, where we could get say 6 students or 9 students from each building. We could use our bus fleet to get them together here after school. We could have 7th and 8th graders involved, so we could loop those 7th graders through. They could have, if you will, a 2-year term to allow for continuity. They wouldn't have to be at a board meeting. They'd be able to create their own agendas as opposed to having to follow our agenda. We would be able to have them meet not only with Mike, but perhaps at a different meeting if they're concerned about something else, with one of our assistant superintendents or our directors, to get different experiences and different viewpoints. They could then come, or they could designate some of their members to come and meet with us on either a periodic basis, you know, perhaps once a trimester, since that's how our middle schools are currently operating, or perhaps as we need them. Perhaps we know we're going to have a conversation about the equity plan in April, so we would ask them to come at that time with their thoughts about that. I just think that would give them more control and give them a more interesting and useful experience to do it that way, as opposed to having them sit here as a board member with things that are really beyond their control and perhaps beyond their interest. That's all.
I had some reaction to that, but I want to give Debbie and Stacy a chance to share.
So one of the things that I thought about is a conversation that Arlen, myself, Phil, Bill, Debbie to a certain extent have had over the years, which is the challenge in developing leadership within our community. So when it's time for us, when we have spots on the board, when we have that's one of the challenges in some of our communities. It's more difficult in other communities to build leadership. And so I'd really like, if we're going to do something like this, is to use this as an opportunity to build leadership within the community starting when they're young. I think, you know, what I saw over the last couple of years is there still is a heavy amount of distrust among certain communities in elected positions in governments. And I like the idea of an advisory council. I like the idea of using it as an opportunity to build faith and trust and leadership within the entire District 21 community, but also recognizing that some areas of our community are more difficult to build leaderships and leaders within those communities. We've seen that over the years. And also I'd like to sort of suggest that we look at it, turn the lens around and sort of ask our young folks in a very sort of Greg Crocker way, which is, what are we not hearing? What are we, you know, what are we missing? And being able to really, it's nice to tell people what you think they need, but I think it's also more valuable to find out, what do you think about a school board? What do you think our job is? I remember maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I was at a camp thing or a District 21 thing where somebody got me to be in the dunk tank. And they said, she's a school board member. She's responsible for homework on the weekends and bad school lunches. And there were like 40 kids in line to dunk me. And in fact, I was dunked many, many times. However, when you think about it, that's probably not unusual of a view unless you are fortunate enough to have kids who get involved in the equity or in the strategic plan. And so I love the idea, because I love the idea of being able to start really in giving those ground level civic experiences. You know, we all have kids. All of our kids have in a different way experienced by natural learning, have had a civics experience. My kids have come to conferences, they've collected signatures on a petition. And so I think really being able to use it as a learning experience, developing some leadership and really hearing what they think as opposed to what we think they think. And so I'm all for it, but I think sort of a hybrid of what we're all thinking to really, because I agree, if it's 3 kids a year or 6 kids a year, if you have some at the beginning and some at the end, but the more thought out the experiences, I think the more valuable the experiences. And I certainly would love to use this as an opportunity, because I do think it's important to start really developing some leadership within the school community and some leadership within our young people. I'm not sure I've ever been so impressed as a couple years ago when they organized the march at Homes, and they across the football field. And those were student leaders who felt strongly about something, who took it to their administration, who organized it, who were respectful, but they felt strongly and they did what they thought they needed to be do. And so I think that if we can use this as an opportunity, it will mean something, not just this year or next year, but it'll mean something in 5 or 10 years as we're really looking around, trying to cultivate leadership within our community to continue on the things that we've already started to do. That's all I have.
Thank you, Stacy. Debbie?
Yeah, at first I was all definitely, you know, we do need student representation in some way. But as I was talking with Bill yesterday, when he mentioned the advisory council, the more I've thought about that, I think that might be actually a better way to go. Because yeah, what here tonight would they have been interested in? What could they have really put any input onto? Whereas if we had had an advisory council, they could have maybe been in on the meetings with, or had Michael do a presentation on the Cooper Library. And then that way they could have gotten an input and say, no, this is really important to us, or whatever. I think having an advisory council might be a better way. And then yes, have them set up when we have our committee reports, have one of them come and report if they have monthly meetings, have somebody come and report back to us. What are their concerns? And that way they can guide the conversation. Because yeah, we only have one middle school student right now represented here on the board. So we only know what might be happening at one school. We don't know what's happening over at Homes. It's like, I'd like to hear from all the schools so that, and then they can compare notes too. So I think having their own committee first, and then have a committee report come back either, you know, the month, you know, after they've met. And so we can hear what they're thinking.
Okay, good cross-section of comments. Let me try and clarify a couple of things, at least that were in my mind as I brought this to the table. One is that looking to incorporate as much diversity as possible, looking not just one student representative, but one from each of our 3 sections, one from each of our 3 middle schools. So a group of 3 students, not one. It's not mutually exclusive to have a student advisory council to the superintendent and have a student representatives to the board. In my discussions with the superintendent at Leiden and with DuPage, was that essentially the students weren't there to react really to whatever might be on the agenda, but is to bring topics and comments forward from their peers at their school level. So it was a matter of giving a report from each of their areas to share with us whatever might be on their mind or on their classmates' minds. So I don't see the 2 items as being mutually exclusive. I see them working hand in hand, especially since Dr. Connolly's already had that on his plan to initiate anyway, the student council. So those are sort of my thoughts on that. I think I relayed back at several months ago, I had the extraordinary good fortune at the college level of being a student representative to the Board of Trustees. And it was the same type of thing. I certainly, at that level, got an education on what was going on from a board's perspective, but I also relayed what was on our minds as students. So it was a 2-way street. And I see that at this level being a possibility, a good possibility as well. And one of the things we're trying to do, and sort of piggyback on what Stacy was saying, as far as developing leadership, is to make sure that we're finding ways to engage more of our community, be it the parent community, student community, or other stakeholders, reaching out. And I think this is a great way. I think it's a way to elevate the students to see what it's like to sit at a board table, not necessarily making the decisions because they wouldn't be able to vote, but to share perspectives of what's going on at their schools, at their level, within our district. Stacey.
This is the problem with going first. This is the problem with going first. So when I was listening to Bill, like you, I was thinking, yes, and, that all sounds great. And I think we could do a lot of everything. And I think there's a way to sort of structure the board meeting. So no offense, have to sit through an audit report. We could have before the board discussion, we could have the student advisory discussion, and they could bring whatever topics they want and have a discussion about that. And then they could go if they wanted. But if they were dying to sit through the audit report, they could stay for the rest of the meeting or something. So they're not, I hear what you're saying. You definitely want it to be authentic. And, there's a lot of which we discussed that I'm pretty sure they're not going to have an opinion about, or even worse. But I think there's a way to make all of it work.
Is it, just like Bill, is it a possibility to check at the middle school level before next board meeting, between now and the February meeting, to see if there might even be the interest level in some way?
Sure. I mean, I could almost guarantee that there will be interest. You're going to have a cross section of students that are there. This is something that they're interested in, right? And so, I don't think there will be a lack of interest, in the concept. But, as I was sitting and listening and taking it all in, and just to give a little bit more context to what Bill was and Arlen were talking about in terms of this already being on my radar from a superintendent, advisory council perspective, this is coming out of the strategic plan as well as the equity action plan, and really trying to create additional opportunities for student agency, for being part of their own, educational process. And so, in the fall, I asked the building principals to begin to work towards developing advisory groups in all of the buildings, right? Not just the middle schools, but also the elementary schools. And my intention was to, at the middle school level, develop that superintendent student advisory council that I would be meeting with, I don't know about monthly, but probably once every 6 weeks or so on and so forth, to really engage in some of those, substantive conversations, because we have no lack of things that we can be tapping their brains on. And so, I can see that being a continuum, right? So I don't think it needs to be an either or, right? I think it could be the whole thing. And one of the ways that it could take of that superintendent student advisory council, there's rotating representation that does come to a board meeting. That it could be that coming out of that, there are set representatives that are maybe even elected through their peers. There's a lot of different ways to get at it. So I think that one of the things I can definitely do for next month is to kind of take all of this and really kind of bring a more fleshed out kind of concept, which then, we can go route A, route B. I mean, there's a lot of ways to kind of interchangeably do things here. And let me just say that like everything else, COVID has slowed us down. When we're focusing on keeping classrooms open, I'm not meeting with kids, right? Although, I'm still getting with kids taught a couple of classes. But you know, I'm not pulling kids out of their buildings to sit down, you know, in the midst of everything else going on. So, you know, it's frustrating for me. I would have liked to have met with this group twice already. And it's still on the launching pad. So we'll get there, but yeah, so I can do that. I can kind of flesh it out, bring a much more, you know, formatted document that you guys can take a look at and, you know, coalesce around if you so desire.
Bill? And I think Mike's just stole a lot of my thunder, but when I was listening first to Debbie comment on my comments, and then hearing from both you, Phil, and Stacy, I thought the three of you were saying something very similar to each other. If there's a council, they can meet, and as Mike said, they could appoint a representative who could come to the board meeting. They could rotate that representative, they could, you know, however they wish to do it. They will meet as often as they meet, and it will bring forward more than just the thoughts and processes of 3 individuals, but of 6 or, you know, 9 or however many per school this organizes to. I think really, it sounds we're talking about different things, but I think really what the two of you and what Debbie were saying were very, very similar, other than saying we're specifically designating you as a student school board member, if you will, as opposed to perhaps allowing the council itself to determine that. So I think it was very close in a lot of what we're talking about.
Phil?
Yes?
Yeah, Phil Arlen here. So I just want to reiterate, I think Stacy and I were exactly on the same page about building leadership. And it seems to me that this is a great opportunity for us to build on that concept, that if schools don't build leadership for the future, democracy is in real trouble. And I think this is a chance for us to do some really great stuff. One of the things I mentioned to Mike was whether we also, you know, we've got our clubs in the buildings, and maybe this becomes sort of a civics club as well, that there's a teacher dedicated to it, to making sure it's meaningful at the school level, somebody who's interested in civics, because we could take kids to village board meetings. There's all kinds of things and experiences that could be part and parcel of this, it seems to me. So I just think it's a great idea and a great way for us, once again, to be a leader.
Okay, thank you. So over the next month, if you could come back with perhaps fleshing it out, as you say, perhaps a timeline because of COVID again through the rest of this year, probably not a lot that we could expect to get done. So maybe it's a staggered start even. Anyway, I appreciate the good conversation, great input tonight on this. Happy to see that we're generally moving in a positive direction with it. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment. The board will now allow any individual to share public comment for up to 3 minutes. Those comments should not include discussion of personnel matters, which should be brought directly to the attention of the appropriate school official. During the public comments time frame, the board and administration listen to comments but may not respond in kind at the time. So, do we have anybody in the audience tonight that signed up for public comment? I see a head shaking no. Mr. Frantini, is anybody in virtual land for us?
There are not.
Are you covering all ends of this now? Okay.
I am.
Our public comment is non-existent tonight, so we will move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be pulled, that anybody wants pulled from the consent agenda? Bill?
If we could pull item K, the approval of the bus patrol agreement.
Yes. Okay, we'll pull K. Anybody else need anything pulled? The chair will entertain a motion to approve all but K, A through J.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Debbie?
Okay, Bill,
Aye.
Jessica,
Yes.
Stacy Allen,
Yes.
myself, yes, Phil,
Aye.
Arlen,
Aye.
and Stacy.
Yes.
Thank you. We're now item K, bus patrol agreement with Bus Patrol America. Bill, do you have a question, comments?
Really questions. First of all, I mean, To be clear, I have little sympathy for anybody who's gonna pull around a stop bus with flashing lights and a sign out. But this is new to us, and I'm curious, I see that the Wheeling Police Department is involved with this. Are they only gonna be enforcing this within the village of Wheeling, or do they have the authority to enforce it throughout our communities?
So we will start with the village of Wheeling. Wheeling obviously only has jurisdiction in Wheeling. The village of Wheeling, the Wheeling Police Department is paying for the installation and implementation of the bus arm cameras in the system. After we approve the contract, if we do so, we will enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the village of Wheeling, as well as approve our own policy on the bus arm cameras or ordinance. And then if the other municipalities want to jump on, they're more than welcome to as well.
Have we had discussions with any of the other communities at this point?
We have not. The village of Wheeling is the one who brought this to us. I had a similar operation, bus patrol operation in Prospect Heights. When I got there, I inherited, there's 1 year left on the agreement. The bus arm cameras now are light years beyond where they were 7 years ago. So this is really not about the revenue, it's about the safety aspect. The revenue that may come in is a nice additional piece if it does. We share that with the village of Wheeling. They've estimated a larger sum than I think we'll get. If we get it, that's great. But it is more about those individuals who choose to pass a bus while they shouldn't be passing it.
I hope we make no money on that, actually.
Right, right.
Right.
I've never heard of Bus Patrol America before. Was that who Prospect Heights was using, or?
No, it was a different company back then. Bus Patrol America, from what I've seen in the literature and in talking with the village of Wheeling, Melissa had done that legwork with Sergeant Elbert. It does sound like they are doing a lot more than the company that I worked with in Prospect Heights, and that this does seem to be catching back on. I think the initial legislation that allowed for it was a little flawed, and there were companies, much like the red light cameras, that were the initial red light cameras that went ahead and took advantage of the system. This is a much more reputable operation, and one that I think will make sure that we're involved with a company that we're not going to have to answer questions about their process, the technology, all of that. It's been well thought out. And Sergeant Elward was extremely impressed with the group, and there are a number of school districts using them.
Have you talked to any of those school districts? Or?
I have not. Melissa may have, and that's my fault for not checking on that. But I know that she had prepared the recommendation and was solid on going forward with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Had the Village of Wheeling discussed with you what the revenue sharing plan would be, percentage-wise?
They did, and I'm sorry that I don't have that in the I thought it was in the recommendation, and it was not. But I will get that information and share that back out.
Okay. I would hope that we're looking at a 50-50 split.
Yeah, for sure.
minimum.
We are not in a, so that was one of the problems with the Prospect Heights agreement is we got about 15 to 25% of the revenue.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so no, we definitely are looking at a share that it's advantageous to both parties to carry out, but mostly it's advantageous to the kids.
I mean, I don't see, and colleagues share, but I don't see any downside for us to participate in this whatsoever.
Yeah, zero cost to us, which is the nicest part about it.
Okay, if there's not any other questions, the Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Debbie?
Okay, myself, yes. Phil?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Stacy?
Yes.
Bill?
Aye.
Jessica?
Yes.
And Stacy.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, next item on the agenda is new business. Approval of furniture purchase for community center and whatever our name's going to be for. It's the new facility right next to our present location on the east.
So really, unless there are questions, this is just kind of we went through our process with our furniture vendor of just, speccing everything out and making sure that we've got, furnished workspaces and so on and so forth. So it's just, it's not real glitzy. It's office furniture. But if you have specific questions, we can certainly answer those.
Phil?
Mike, you and I discussed this, so I'll just tee it up again real quick for the benefit of the public. To what extent have we been able to utilize existing furniture
Yes,
to avoid?
yeah, the tables we're sitting at are going over there. I mean, we need more tables, so there will be additional tables, but these tables are going over there. Our workstations are not, we've got a lot of old stuff in this building, but the workstations that are in line with the workstations that we would be having in the new building will either be used at Hawthorne or, I mean, so yes, the bottom line is that yes, there's a lot of furniture that's over here that will continue to be used.
Thank you.
Just so you know, Bill, every table that's in here, so obviously not all of them are out right now. The boardroom over there is completely furnished table-wise, as well as some of those tables being used in other conference rooms. And then as Mike said, I believe it's 3 workstations and some conference tables going over.
Thank you.
And the amount of the purchase is 425,000, I believe, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Unless anybody has any problems with this, Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Debbie?
Okay, Jessica?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Phil?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Stacy?
Yes.
And Bill?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is the announcement. Our next meeting is February 17th. And with that, let me say, appreciate our lone public. Thank you for making sure we weren't totally lonely tonight. I appreciate that. I'm sure we all do. And the next item is a closed session. Be it resolved, the Board of Education approves to recess CCSD21 January 20th, 2022 regular board meeting and convene a closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body, or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, to discuss collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, to discuss the placement of individual students in special education programs and other matters relating to individual students, and to discuss the minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act for purpose of semi-annual review of the minutes.
Second.
Okay? Are we
Uh,
good?
Stacy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Me, yes. Phil?
Aye.
Arlen?
Give you a thumbs up. What more could you ask for?
Arlen?
Aye.
Stacy?
Yes.
Bill?
Aye.
And Jessica?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't believe have anything that we're coming back to take action on, correct?